Okay. Motion to accept the previous minutes.
Second. Or motion.
Okay. Vote all in favor? Okay. So the minutes were approved. Does anybody have the agenda in front of them?
Yeah, number 2 was acceptance of the previous minutes, and next is health update from the health inspector.
Okay, Ben.
All right. So the first item is Tapestry / Craig's Doors update. Just to make sure everybody's aware, that was presented before the select board this past month, and the select board had additional questions related to that contract that we need to clear up. The big question was around who has access to the services that Tapestry would provide. Obviously, it was Craig's Doors that requested the service for various reasons that we've already discussed. But the select board wants to make sure that the funding, or at least has questions about the funding, to see if other members or other people in the community of Hadley would be able to get Tapestry services if they request it. Just to let the board know about that, I did speak to Tapestry, and they amended the contract to include any member of the community of Hadley. So that's been updated, and there is no additional cost. There's no other changes other than the fact they had to update their signatures and everything on that contract. So that hopefully will address, I think, the main concern that the select board had, at least at the time of the last meeting, about the contract. The other thing that I'll mention, actually no, before we get to that, I'm curious to know what the board's thoughts are based on what I just described, and what the board thinks about like what their position is on that contract, and if they want me to bring it before the select board again. Just trying to get an opinion from the board on what you guys think.
Yeah, I would like to meet with you, Ben, and go over the contract in detail, so I'm really aware of the whole the scope of the request. And then I was thinking I would go with you to the select board meeting to represent it, and perhaps a member of Tapestry could be there as well.
Yeah, I have spoken to Tapestry, and they are willing to have a representative go to the select board at that next meeting. The main reason for that is going to be as a subject matter expert, just on what the services are that they provide.
Yeah.
So they can answer those questions. I am happy to have any board member. I really appreciate you, representing the board or volunteering to represent the board. in going to that select board meeting, because as you guys are aware, I'm an agent of the board, and so I'm happy to do the work that the board supports and wants us to do. But ultimately, I'm just the agent. So this anything that once it crosses from me, lining the ducks up and all that kind of stuff. Once it gets past that and it gets to we have a political conversation about what needs to be passed or what doesn't and all that kind of stuff. That's a little bit outside of just the agent's purview. So the board stepping up and saying, this is what we want and this is why, I think is a great thing. So thank you for that.
I'll come with you. I'll be home at the end of February, and you and I can meet, and then we can I can make a presentation again to the select board. If Dragon, are you okay with that? Okay.
All right. So that's any other questions or thoughts on that item before we move to the next?
No.
All right. The next item on the list is the status of the septic system checklist. I have reached out. Our third-party inspector I have sent him that checklist. I have not heard back on feedback from him, and I have asked him to, I've reminded him that I need that feedback, and I haven't gotten that feedback back. So, it is off season and we don't have anything pressing that's happening right now. The ground is frozen. It might be the fact that he knows that there's not really any work to do right now, so it's not high on his priority list. But I'll continue to try to remind him I need some feedback on that so that we can finalize the septic checklist. The next item is emergency preparedness training. I had another meeting with the collaborative that and state representatives that are trying to push this along, that having again emergency preparedness, simply having a plan from a health perspective for if there is an emergency that pops up. And one of the things that they've tasked me to do is they've sent me essentially a spreadsheet that they want me to assign different responsibilities to different people. Obviously, a lot of that would land on myself, but some might land on, for example, as a backup, the chair might be a backup for some of those items. Some of them might be our collaborative nurses that would handle some of those items. Others might fall under Mike from our fire chief, who would handle some of those items. So anyways, I'm just letting you know that's the next step, and I'll be reaching out to board members that I think might need to be put on certain portions of that spreadsheet. Any questions about that before I move to the next?
Happy to do that, Ben.
Okay, great.
No problem.
Yeah, that sounds similar to a every 5-year kind of ask that we've had historically. So that's great that they're reviving that.
Yeah, they want to make sure, and they're being very open to our answers, but they want something, so that if when the thing happens, let's hope it doesn't, but when the thing happens, they want to be able to take that out, the handy dandy list, and say, yeah, this is our, you're responsible for that. So,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then the next thing is collaborative issues, which is, let's see, what do I have for that? So we had our meeting with the collaborative related to their communication to us with Maven, and letting us know about infectious diseases and possible FBIs and how they, FBI meaning foodborne illness, and how they're going to inform me. We're not done with that SOP yet, but we've made progress, and because of that, they've really been letting me know anything that pops up. They're really communicative, even more than before, and they were communicative before. So that's working out really well. It'll get even better, but that progress as far as that's concerned.
That's great.
One of the things I want you guys to be aware of is we've now done all the annual initial pool tanning and body art inspections. There are some re-inspections that need to take place. there's nothing really bad, but there's some stuff that have been found here and there. And so I do need to do some re-inspections, but all of the initials are done with those for those categories. The other item that I wanted to mention on this list, it is that we are having high numbers of flu. Highest, so if you go to the state dashboard, there's a dashboard that anybody can go to and look at the respiratory illnesses that are circulating in the state and what their numbers are. And if you look, you'll see that flu over the past, 2 or 3 weeks really has ramped up. The highest it's been since these records have been kept, which is 2020, so not too long ago. But since this dashboard has existed, it's the highest that it's been.
Yeah, it's back to pre-COVID.
Yeah. It's out there. And by the way, our town hall has actually felt the wrath of this. So yeah, it's just figured I want to make sure the board is aware. You guys are probably already aware, but just stating it publicly, we're having flu issues.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's not that there's actually more flu. It's that people have COVID is so far in most of people's distant past that people are not exercising the vigilance with mask wearing and hand washing and sanitizing and social distancing that they were in the last several years. So we're just back. Yeah, that too. Thank you, Dr. Mosler.
Yeah, and it's because of that, obviously you're going to have any respiratory illness that likes to have similar ways of spreading itself will obviously enjoy or be happy that that's happening. So anyways, yep, so that's gone up. Last thing I'll bring up, which let me see, is that, yep, it's under my category, so I'll bring it up, which is the plumbing inspector. I don't know how much you guys were able to review this, but let me just give you a little bit of background. That we are going through budgeting right now, and it came up that technically the plumbing inspector still is under the Board of Health, but the way that the everyday, reporting in goes, the plumbing inspector works under the building department. And so basically it never comes up other than during the budgeting. And our interim town administrator came to me and said, hey, is there any way that we can kind of, put this so that it's always just in the same category? And I said, well, I'll talk to the board about it. I did try to figure out what happened on how the plumbing inspector came under the board to start with. And what you have in the agenda is some of the language of the law that I found that states how this likely happened, which is unless there is a building inspector, and I don't know when the first plumbing inspector was appointed in Hadley, but unless there is a building inspector at that time, the Board of Health does it. And so it's very common that plumbing falls under the Board of Health. So, but if you read the text of it, it does kind of say it's if the inspector of buildings is not there. So anyways, I don't want to say how things should go or anything like that. I just want to ask the board what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, so I know that's something from my understanding, has just been kind of like grandfathered and carried over for the end of times, because this was back before Tim Nyhart was the new part-time building inspector, like many, like over 20 years ago. And I mean, I'm totally open to it. I think it just hasn't really come up as a pressing or a needed issue to adjust. It's always been something in the back of my mind going like, that doesn't really align with kind of our operations. But I don't know if we should request like a formal statement or presentation or whatever you want to call it for next meeting for us to then vote on. What do you think? What's your position, Dr. Mosler?
Yeah, no, I agree. Peter, you mean to remove that from our purview? Yeah. Peter, do you have any thoughts on how we go about doing that administratively?
Well, administratively, as Ben mentioned, from a practical viewpoint, the plumbing inspector inspectors essentially work with the building inspector at this point. So, I think our interim town administrator is just trying to make sure that we being Hadley are, if you will, compliant with the wishes or the wording of, what the state has handed down. And really the state sounds like they're really leaving it up to us. So from a budgeting viewpoint, since I've been, working for the Board of Health, it's never been part of our budget. The only thing that, it connects us, if you will, to the plumbing inspector is that the name and the phone number of the plumbing inspector happens to be on our webpage. And I didn't even notice it until Ben mentioned it like 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's like, gee, I wonder why Mike's coming to us now asking about this. And I happened to look at our webpage, and sure enough, there's
And
Ray Shipman's name
question-
listed.
Question is, how do we move that from the Board of Health to the building inspector?
Well, that's, as I think Ben mentioned, that's really, I think, up to you guys if that's what you want to do.
Yes.
So we would,
Go ahead, Dragon, sorry.
no, yeah, we would write a formal proposal and we would vote on it. And then Ben or whatever from my understanding, our person would then bring it to the select board to have it finally accepted. Cause it's a budget thing.
Who wants to take that on?
So just to let you guys know, I'm happy to do it as the agent of the board and send it out to you guys. I would have it for this meeting. However, I asked HR to weigh in on how that would happen just from their perspective, because it's going to go from one side to another department. And I want to make sure they're not blindsided by it. And make sure there's no bumps in the road. They haven't gotten back to me yet. And so I didn't have anything. I didn't want you guys to vote on something tonight, because if you were to say we no longer are appointing the plumbing inspector, then the town doesn't have a plumbing inspector until the building officially takes it
Right.
on. So
Exactly.
really quick, like handoff, like a quick thing, and everybody's just, we flip a switch, and that's how it happens. We're not at the flip a switch point yet. And so I just want to make sure that HR is smooths everything out. And then I'm happy to work with legal to draw up something that the board can vote on. And then we'll go from there. That's what my thoughts are on that. What is your thoughts on that plan?
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ben, I think that's the way to go. And again, from a practical viewpoint, the listing of the plumbing inspector and the budgeting dollars and so on and so forth really, for our town anyways, really belongs with Tom Quinlan. From the HR director's viewpoint, I think it's good to check in with her from an organizational chart viewpoint. But the plumbing inspector is pretty much like our Title V inspector, in that he or they are really contracted out, and they're essentially on a 1099 basis. So it's good to touch all the bases, but I think ultimately, as long as you guys are good with it, you vote on it, then we can carry it forward through the channels, be it the select board, HR, and so forth, and make sure that it aligns with the building inspector. Again, if that's what you guys want to do.
Yes.
All right.
Makes sense.
With that said, any other questions before I turn it back over? Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank
So I believe I'm next up. So I'm on the agenda to talk a little bit about the budget, and so I will talk just a little bit about the budget. So from a 30,000 foot viewpoint, I can tell you that that our town treasurer and our interim town administrator did a first pass presentation last Wednesday to the select board and to the finance committee in a joint session to let them know where we're headed as far as fiscal year 2026, which begins July 1st. Um, we have the town has typical challenges in terms of projecting revenue for the remaining 6 months of this year, this fiscal year, and then again, obviously, fiscal year 2026. Some of the question marks are, typical stuff like, what will the state be contributing to us, and other revenue sources within the town and within the state. On the expense side, there are some challenges this year that that the town is facing. We're looking to again uh, do some improvements as far as physical buildings and so forth. We're still looking at upgrading the town hall. There's still meetings and committees working on coming up with a new DPW complex and so on and so forth. We did end up getting surprised with an increase in our health insurance premiums for town employees. The increase year over year is 18%, which is like, I don't think the town has ever seen 18%. I used to work in health insurance years ago. We never passed along a rate increase of 18% year over year. We just didn't. The way Hadley works is we are a member of a Hampshire group, a buying group that represents towns in Western Mass, in Hampshire County. And we buy our health insurance as a group from one of the major insurance carriers. The HR director is looking at some potential options going forward. I can tell you that the town of Amherst is faced with the same thing. It was just in the local media in the last week or so, where the town administrator announced that their premium increase is to the tune of something like 20%. So I don't know everything that's behind it. I can only guess at this point. But I know some of the insurance companies are reporting numbers for the last calendar year, and their earnings are not as great as you might think they were or that they would be. So I don't know what's going on, but again, not necessarily our issue. However, bringing it back to the town level, the increase that we really didn't anticipate is something like $400,000. $400,000 on a total budget of $20 million a year. It's a big number because, again, we normally don't see that kind of number. So the message is that the town administrator, treasurer, and select board are still working on the budget along with the finance committee as well. They plan on meeting again in March, kind of a second pass at where we are, where we're going. Obviously, the budget needs to be presented to the town at the town meeting in May. In terms of our own budget in the Board of Health, what Ben and I submitted, what it is known as a level services, level spending budget, which means that we're not adding any people, we're not necessarily adding any services, we're not asking for any more money. And so in the first pass, we submitted a budget of $106,000 to the treasurer and the interim town administrator. The budget came back to us with the town administrator recommending $106,000. So they're pretty much in tune with what we have submitted, what we've asked for. And that includes the wage increases that Marcy and Ben and I were able to get through the vote that took place in the fall town meeting and became retroactive July 1st, 2024. What the town treasurer is using as a cost of living increase for fiscal year 2026, just to get the ball rolling, if you will. the COLA that is being used is 3% year over year. I don't know if it'll stay at 3% or it'll go to some other number at this point. But in any event, from the Board of Health's viewpoint, there's really no change in the total that Ben and I submitted. No real challenges. So right now we're in good shape, but again, the numbers are still being crunched at a much higher level. So we're just waiting to hear back in terms of, okay, what are the next steps, if there are next steps for the Board of Health? Any questions about the budget or, what we're doing or what we submitted? It's pretty straightforward. We're not, Ben and I didn't put anything in there to allow us to buy boats or planes or anything like that. No questions? Okay. The other item that I wanted to talk about, and I think Margaret was going to put it on the agenda, kind of at the last minute. I don't know if we get on there or not, but the food establishment permits, the renewal of the permits for 2025. I can tell you this year, unlike last year and the year before, the food establishments in Hadley have done a really, really good job in terms of renewing their permits with us. They've been more cooperative than last year or the year before. A lot more folks have adapted to our application Permit Link. So we're getting a lot of the renewals online, they're paying online. So it makes my life a lot easier. It makes it simpler. We still do have a couple stragglers. One of them is a fairly large food establishment in town. I won't name the name. And we have a couple other small ones. Not absolutely sure that they're actually still in business. I've Googled their business names, and they appear to be in business, at least on the web. I may have to actually go visit them someday to see if they're still in business. But anyway, one of the things that Ben and I talked about is possibly levying a surcharge or a penalty, as we did last year, to those food establishments that still have not renewed and are essentially operating without permits. We did have one food establishment last year who actually did pay the penalty. And matter of fact, he anticipated paying it again this year because he, quote unquote, forgot, but he's actually in good shape. But we have either 2 or 3 establishments that have not paid. It's February 13th. They should have renewed back in October and November. So that's why I'm bringing it up. We didn't want to just go ahead and issue surcharges without running it by you guys first or having you vote on it. So any feedback, any comments, any Susan or Dragon?
I think we probably ought to do it.
Yeah, I think for the sake of consistency, because that was our practice last year, that it sounds like you've done all kind of reasonable first steps. And that way, we just have some past practice with
Yeah.
kind of the same, responses.
Why do if we set penalties last year, why do we have to revisit it this year is my question. Don't we just have a policy?
I don't know. I don't know if you guys actually made it a policy, forever. I don't recall that. I mean, that's
Maybe for the next meeting, you can look up what we did last year and we can vote formally to make it policy moving forward if we didn't already do that last year. I can't imagine that we wouldn't do that, but maybe we didn't.
yeah. I honestly don't remember.
Okay, it's not something we should have to revisit every, we should just,
I would think so.
as dragons, so we should just have the policy. Yeah.
So one other thing that I want to mention though is that some of the stragglers, I did reach out to them by way of email. And again, they actually did respond, but again, I've got maybe 2 small establishments and 1 large establishment that they're just not responding. And I know the 1 large establishment is still in business. Um, so I don't, again,
Right, well,
I would suggest that, if we don't have payment from them by the end of February, which is, 2 weeks away, again, they're operating without a permit, that, starting March 1, maybe the clock starts ticking and they need to pay the penalty that we had established last year.
and also be notified that their business is gonna have to be shut down.
Yeah, I think that's what that would be right after the if the penalty. If they don't pay the penalty and they have no interest in updating, then they can't operate without a license. Just like
Yeah, Ben and Peter, if you can look at the minutes from, what we established last year, and then just let us know what we need to do to make that a consistent policy.
Okay. But are you guys okay with us then moving forward? Like this, like next week,
Yeah.
communicating to these establishments saying, hey, if you haven't paid by whatever, March 1st,
Yeah, so
here's the penalty.
that I would like to make a motion that for this year until we're able to review and make it and vote on having a regular annual progression of fees and implementation and stuff like that. That at this time, I would like to make a motion that if we don't receive any payment by these outstanding establishments by February, is it 28th this year? We're
Yeah.
not a leap year, right?
Yeah.
Not February 30th.
February 1st.
February 28th, that by March 1st, their clock starts ticking, and they will pay the same penalty that we implemented last year. Do I have a second by Dr. Mosler?
Second,
Vote.
should we, all in favor? Yeah, should we also drag and put something in there about, somehow giving them formal notice that their business is gonna have to stop? They're gonna have to have a cease and desist order if they don't pay by such and such?
That's a good point. Yeah, I would say that should be in communication. Ideally, I mean, I know town offices are closed on the 17th, but ideally this week that we should send out that communication so they have that foresight.
Yeah, I mean, I can, if you guys approve it tonight, I can bang out letters tomorrow. I'm back in the office tomorrow. So I mean, it's not a big deal.
All right, good.
Okay. I'm good if you're good. I think that's all I had. I think otherwise, we're in pretty good shape. We've got, as you're probably aware, the Asparagus Festival is coming back to Hadley in June. We actually already have an application from a food truck vendor. They want to participate again. So the application started to come in already for that event. So it's the select board has approved it, and so I believe all systems are go. And it should be a good event again this year for Hadley, and again from a financial viewpoint. Through through permits, fire permits and food permits. It's a good thing for the town. That's all I've got, unless you have something for me.
Thank you, Peter.
Sure.
I'll just jump in real quick and say that I'll write up the policy for the late fees and closure for like the timeline for next year. And the board can vote on that at our next meeting. So
Perfect.
So I think the next agenda item would be update from the town nurse. Did we get an email from?
I got
CSB?
a text from Marcy, and I thought everybody was included, but anyway, she was not able to come tonight, but things are going well. She's giving presentations and seems to be doing quite well at the senior center. and I've gotten only positive feedback. So,
That's good.
So the next one would be review letter asking Board of Health to support the competition, not competition, completion of the MCRT.
okay, so the select board, I read in the newspaper, already approved that. So we don't,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, and for Ben, for your,
it's off our agenda.
and for your knowledge, it's the rail trail.
Right.
There are folks advocating that the rail trail in Massachusetts get completed. Apparently we've completed 64 miles out of 104 miles. And, so there were some parties that are looking for the town governments to, support, send letters of support to the state, asking that, this, project get completed so that folks can ride their bicycles from Pittsfield to Provincetown, kind of thing. And so, yeah, so I think we can take that off our agenda because select board took it up last Wednesday and unanimously agreed to get behind it and craft a letter of support. So, yeah, so the Board of Health, anything that Board of Health would write might be redundant. So, but thanks for looking at that anyways.
And then number 7, is it okay if I move on? Does anyone have anything else for that? Okay. Number 7 is any other business that could not be reasonably anticipated.
No, other than our next meeting.
Right.
And that would be March 13th.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have.
Okay, good.
Let's see, and that one, so we've had 2 remotes. Will you be back at that point,
I
Susan?
will be. I'll be back the end of February.
Okay, so then,
I'll be in touch with you anyway, Ben, to discuss the tapestry.
okay, so then is it a good idea? So I know we've been remote last couple, but since everybody should be back and ready to go, do it in person, right?
Yes, let's do it in person.
Great.
Okay,
All right.
good.
And that would be at 6:30, same time, right? With bells on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Call to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Good seeing everybody. Take care.
7:06.